A very good afternoon to everyone. I welcome you on behalf of the Department of English, Jhargram Raj College Girls Wing, to today's special lecture series, Mapping Theory, a brief chronological survey. We are glad to have with us today Professor Shambhuddha Ghosh, Assistant Professor in English, Krishnanagar Government College. Literary theory was not initially a part of the UG curriculum. However, with the introduction of the new CBCS syllabus, the later papers have an inclination towards theory, and especially for students who are willing to pursue higher studies in literature and social sciences, theory becomes our touchstone, our elixir. In fact, with the growing complexities of the age, conceptual lenses are becoming the command of the day, and theory helps us make a better sense of our realities. Whether we move from literature to theory or theory to literature, one doesn't exist without the other. This is why we have arranged this talk today so that we can help our students and participants to gain greater access to this enigma which we term theory. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our officer in charge, Professor Sushil Kumar Bormon, for constantly supporting and encouraging us in everything that we do. This event would not have been possible without his encouragement either. And I would like to take this opportunity to and request him to say a few words. Sir, are you here?
Thank you, Madhumita. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Very good afternoon to everyone. I cordially welcome our special guest today, Professor Shambhuddha Ghosh, Assistant Professor in English, Krishnanagar Government College. He is our research person today for delivering valuable lecture on mapping theory, a brief chronological survey. I welcome all the participants who have joined our special lecture from the state and different states of country. And I welcome, warmly welcome our students, teacher and staff to this special lecture session. I am not competent enough to say something on this topic. This is purely an English literature topic. So better in this welcome address, I want to say something about our institution and the surroundings of our college. Our college was established in 2014. This is the new college in this area, and 14th July in 2014 it was inaugurated by our Chief Minister, Ms. Mamata Banerjee, and this is the only women college in the newly formed Jhargram district. Jhargram district also a newly formed district in West Bengal, and it was formed in 2017, 4th April. And it is a unique district in our state because about 30% of total population of our district Jhargram, belongs to scheduled tribe community. And we know this community is still backward in education, and they are also backward economically. And in our college, although 30% of ST people are there, but you know very few ST students are available in the degree level, and we see in our college also very few students, girl students, come to join the degree course and complete this course. But always we encourage them to come forward, and we always try to help them in different aspects. And we can say something here regarding our endeavor for these ST people. You know, there are Santal, Munda, Lodha Sabor, Mahali, Murao, and other some community and scheduled caste community, and most backward community under scheduled tribe is Lodha Sabor community. In our district, nearby our college, 4 kilometers from our college, there is a village, Pukuria. And in this Pukuria village, there are two Lodha locality, Lodha Pada. One is Pukuria East Lodha Pada, but Pukuria Purbo Lodha Pada. The teachers and all the teachers of our college are involved in a Pathshala there. We have formed a Pathshala in that Lodha Pada, where we teach. We means a Lodha housewife in that para has been engaged for teaching the Lodha children of that para. Lodha children, there are 23 Lodha children who generally go to the nearby primary school, but generally they, oftenly they don't go. But, and there is no person, no literate person in that para. Only a housewife is there who passed Madhyamik in 2016. We found out that housewife, and we have formed a Parshala there. The housewife is engaged there for teaching. And we also go there for teaching. Our teachers also go there, and our students, some students also go there to teach them. So this is something we want to say, but it is not the matter of discussion today. Okay, we are eagerly waiting for the special lecture to be delivered by Sambudho Ghosh. I again all the organizing members of the special lecture committee. I thank the lecturers for organizing this type of special lecture. And I will special lecture today and end it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. We now move on to our esteemed speaker of the day, Professor Shambhuddha Ghosh. We are immensely grateful for him for taking time out of his busy schedule for us. Professor Ghosh has been a student of Jadavpur University from his undergraduate days. He went on to pursue his MA and MPhil from the same and is currently working on his doctoral thesis on the poetics of exile in Chimosini, Derek Walcott, Joseph Brodsky, and Ronaldo Arenas. We are so thankful to you, sir, for being here today. Without further ado, let us proceed. Thank you so much. Sir, are you here?
Hello. Yes,
Yes.
am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
So, very warm welcome to all our guests and my regards, heartfelt regards to the OIC, Jhargram Raj College, Girls Wing, the organizers of this webinar, who helped make this event possible. So, can you see me? Actually, I cannot change the layout of my window. So, I hope you all can see me. So, please confirm.
Yes, Shambhudo, you're perfectly
Yes.
visible.
Okay, okay, thank you. So, yes, all of the members of the staff who made this event possible, I thank all of them, and I'm also grateful to all of them for giving me this opportunity to present before you what I believe will be a very rushed up journey, because the expanse of the things I am going to cover is really all too much to take in the next, say, couple of hours. So I hope I can help you by providing you some pointers which lead up to what am I trying to say in this lecture. I do not claim, by the way, any ownership of the content I am going to provide, because these things are available in any proper introductory guide to theory. So there are a number of books, and I'm sure that our students are also aware of which books to read. So, for example, there is Beginning Theory, which is edited by Peter Barry, and there is the Routledge Handbook of Theory, and of course there are older books like the one published from Oxford University Press, edited by Patricia Waugh. And then there are, of course, other books like Raman Selden, and I'm sure all of us will also be able to recollect Hans Burton's books. So these are all of them very useful resources for guiding yourselves into theory. Because one problem, oh, by the way, the one problem you'll face in the location I'm trying this webinar from is the incoming trains. So please bear with the minor inconvenience that this is going to cause. Uh, so yes, so this Herculean task which I have before my hands to sum up broadly some of the movements of theory within the next couple of hours. So I will try to use the present now option to okay, share with you one file which I'm not finding at the moment. Wait. We'll come to that a little later, maybe. So yes, let's begin with our journey. So mapping theory, what does the title mean in this context? That is, finding a map is, after all, a visual representation of space. So when we are mapping theory, we are going into theory as if it were a representation of space itself, like cartography. Of course, I'm talking in abstract terms. So there may be an initial problem in comprehending where I am coming from. But what I mean here is a number of broad tendencies can be discussed across the history of literary criticism first and then theory. And these approaches primarily came about from the second half of the 19th century, because if we are talking about theory, then there was a very crucial distinction made between what was literary and what was extra literary. So from the perspective of literary studies, so from English studies perspective, you cannot look in the same way at, say, Marx or Foucault the way we do today in the 1850s, for example, because this entire discipline of English studies, this has emerged later on in the early decades of the 20th century. We have our discipline, the outlines of our discipline broadly defined. So one problem all of us sometimes face is we are not accustomed with the terminology or the methods through which argumentation is done in theories from the social sciences, like, say, economics. And the elder brother of economics, or elder sister of economics, was political economy in the second half of the 19th century, which is the domain of the great classical economists Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and then the physiocrats, the French school of economists. So all of them sort of laid the foundations of our modern day subjectivity. So when I'm saying subjectivity, I am meaning the involvement of a human consciousness, let's say entity. I'm using these terms loosely. A marker of human existence which sort of reads, tries to match patterns. Match patterns in order to predict what might be a more equitable distribution of resources, or say the order of justice, how it can be reinforced better. So these were the interests of the sociological sciences. So political economy was one of them. Then we have the emergent discipline of sociology, classical economics, the joining of the order of politics and economics. So all of that happened gradually, but after the Industrial Revolution, the pickup, so to speak, was a little hasty. And what that led to was a little disjunct between the older order of theory, which was what? Liberal humanism. So liberal humanism is something we first need to define in order to proceed with our discussion on theory. So I'm trying to use the present now option here. So let's present your entire screen. Share. So is my screen visible now on your screens? It will take some time, I think. Yes. So now it's visible. So let's come with first liberal humanism. What we mean by the term. So first thing we face when we study literature, where we're coming from the literary studies schools.
Shambhuto, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, yes. Is there an audio? Hello?
Yeah, could you just share a full screen presentation?
Yes, yes, yes. Certainly. I'm trying to do that. Yes. Okay. I'm just zooming. Okay. So yes. So yeah. So when we're looking at liberal humanism, the problems we face as students of literary studies is that we have ambiguous terms such as, say, the conflict between good and evil, the relative morality of the characters in a play, whether Macbeth's evil can be called darkness or blackness. Is Lady Macbeth the fourth witch? These are very commonplace, stereotypical questions that at least used to come in the honors courses under CU, and also to some extent in other universities as well. At present, where I'm teaching in KU, I'm sure these are very well discussed questions of English literature. So where it all changed, the first thing is this idea of literature as a phenomena which is completely disjointed from the other areas of social existence. the phenomena that literature has to be seen only in isolation, and the fact that what literary studies scholars, researchers, teachers, what all of them do is simply an examination of uh, the text which becomes sort of a substitute for uh, the scriptures, for example. So it's the Holy Bible of literary studies, this conception of the text, words on the page approach. So that was the first founding approach. And this is something which I.A. Richards had attempted in his model of practical criticism. The approach is atemporal, which means it has no connection to the conception of time as it passes by while the analysis is being made. So it's something of an experiment in literary reading where you look at the words on the page, and instead of going into the extra textual areas, that is the context, you are you're trying to read as far as possible in between the lines and trying to gauge or interpret. Uh, so, what these early forefathers of liberal humanism or liberal humanist theory wanted was to simply look at literature as an extra social phenomenon. And by doing that, what was achieved was literature was completely dissociated from its uh, presence as an institution that is also socially mediated. Mm, For example, I recall having read in Chinua Achebe that it is only the non-European writer who must, by his or her own efforts, achieve universality, whereas the Western author is automatically universal. So this idea that there is a certain kind of purported universalism which is independent of the context to which it is applied. And what is the basis of this claim? The claim is that the category of the human is universal, that is, sans context. So, liberal humanism also has these features. I'm sorry, there will be some disruption in the audio due to the passing of trains, but you have to bear with this. I'm really sorry. So, fixed notions of identity based on a commonly imagined category of the individual. So the individual is same everywhere. So it's not context dependent. Then the notions of what constitute the inalienable rights and what are the privileges accorded to a human being by dint of their being born. So just the fact that they have appeared on the planet is enough to guarantee them certain inalienable rights and privileges. So once again, with the American War of Independence, we have the idea of liberty, and which closely follows the French Revolution. So it's like a high watermark. We know it is an event which altered the course of European history forever, perhaps. So this idea that liberal, universalist, humanist values can be sort of spread is built on the epistemic or knowledge framework of the Enlightenment. Now, the Enlightenment, is a phenomena which occurred over a couple of centuries, and very famously, Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, he had presented a sort of manifesto of the Enlightenment. What is Enlightenment? And in that essay, he expressed the idea that the Enlightenment was an attempt to free man from his self-imposed condition of naivety or perpetual tutelage, kind of tutelage which humanity takes up to educate itself. So he says that, for example, we go to the doctor to let him prescribe our daily diet. We go to the church, we go to the priest to confess or give our to absolve us of the guilt which we have for our sins. So all of that, he asks people to shake that away and take up the motto of dare to know, sapere ode. So sapere ode is the motto of the European Enlightenment as stated by Kant. So this is happening in conjunction with the gradual industrialization which has started ever since the 18th century. In England, we know people who are students of English literature. We also know a little bit of English social and economic history. So we know about the enclosures, the gradual sort of taking over of the communal lands, forests, and economic resources through a series of parliamentary acts known as the Enclosure Acts, which sort of allured the romantic poet, the idea of the romantic poet, to rebel against this constant dehumanization, decommunalization of things, and a movement towards a more individualist locus. Uh, so the bourgeois enlightenment, I'm saying, because this is, of course, I've put it in, I've ironized it in quotes, because this is a Marxist term which need not hold good for all kinds of reasoning. So the coming together of rationalism embodied in the scientific revolution, which started around the time Isaac Newton laid claims to the laws of gravitation and the idea that there were fixed laws of motion. So that set off the scientific revolution, which got mature with the Industrial Revolution. And so rationalism compared to, say, empiricism, rationalism comes together with empiricism, which is the faculty of observing or examining objects by your senses. So using your sensory data and using instruments to measure physical objects. So all of this is coming together in the bourgeois enlightenment, which goes on to the founding fathers of classical or early economics. So this is also the time of the emergence of the human sciences. So economics, sociology, all of these disciplines have emerged during the latter half, or we can say throughout the 18th century. Smith and Ricardo, they are the forefathers of the liberal or the classical economics, this model. So before that, the legal part has been taken care of by none other than Thomas Paine. Uh, we have Rousseau from France, whose writings before uh, the French Revolution were instrumental in sort of fostering this idea of individual liberty. Then we have Locke, J.S. Mill. These are all very important figures, but I'm sort of rushing through them to go through into the problems in liberal humanist reasoning, because I have to keep a strict watch on the clock, which already says it's 2:07, so I must do haste. So these are the founding assumptions of liberal humanism. But the trick in liberal humanist reasoning is to completely wipe off these historical conditions, to dehistoricize, and therefore to depoliticize theory. Not just theory, literature as an institution. The depoliticization of literature as an institution, what does it do? It leads people on to the idea that the individual is the foremost element of society. In our present conditions of free market capitalism, we are indeed sort of propelled to believe in this idea that the individual is the lowest unit of integration in terms of ideas. So this process started uh, during the onset of the Industrial Revolution, and as I can tell you, it was the 18th century, and now we are sitting in the 21st. So 300 years of gradually evolving capitalism is the economic basis of a lot of this liberal humanist charade, which sort of prevailed over the literary studies. But this attitude was also something which people adopted to keep out of trouble. And as you know, if we have students who have gone through the history of, say, Victorian era, you would know that the thing was not like that. Class as a category has come to dominate. Uh, so once again, we are looking at the loopholes of liberal humanist reasoning. First is, of course, this idea that some individuals were just more individualistic than others. So this also includes the conception of, say, the romantic conception of the artist, who is completely disjointed from who represent people and their times. Of course, we have Shelley, who wrote a lot about the communal experience, the problems people were encountering. We even have that in Keats. But the problem which began to widen the gulf between what constituted the literary and what constitutes the social. So, in effect, liberal humanism attempted at a kind of facelessness, where the temporal and spatial constraints imposed upon you as an individual will not apply, and you can therefore be the ideal liberal humanist subject. But what it ended up doing was privileging precisely certain particular categories, such as European, white, male, cisgender, bourgeois, imperialist. So all of them are labels. These are labels coined from this or that kind of theory. And what they mean is this common thing. They have something in common, that the ideal liberal humanist subject is something of a myth. It existed to foster a precise kind of political behavior. So we will briefly go through how it started. First, we have F.D. Maurice. And this is, of course, I'm talking about a time where English studies has not sort of formally begun as uh, something to be taught in colleges and universities. Uh, so F.D. Maurice said, language is the purpose of literature, and the real motive imminent in it was to implement liberal humanism in a society. Then we have Eliot's essays, which is once again something all of us have sort of read or gone through. Then we have practical criticism, I. Richards, and we have also other figures like Empson, Seven Types of Ambiguity. Then we have the great tradition by F.R. Lewis, who advocates something called the canon, something that should constitute the mainstream of literature. It was also a means of providing or limiting the space of activities which we have in English studies into something that would propagate culture. There were older forefathers like Matthew Arnold, in who in Culture and Anarchy has stated how culture has a civilizing influence upon the other classes in society. For example, the Philistines, the business, the mercantile class, whom he satirized in his work. And Arnold, in the study of poetry, also advocates a method called the tuckstone method. And you know that a tuckstone is a stone which is used to convert base metals to gold. So the tuckstone of culture will civilize whoever Arnold considered as, uh, I don't know, Philistines, people without taste. So this would be the objective. But the fact is, in all societies, culture is something which is attained through a few generations of the fulfillment of the basic necessities of the individual. So it would appeal only to a very privileged minority. So this idea was gradually becoming mainstream, that the literary artist, through his work, was doing something uh, liberally beneficial for continued existence. And therefore, it was atemporal for all time. In Ben Jonson's sort of uh, allusion to Shakespeare's career, he used this phrase, is not for this time, but for all time. So liberal humanism tries to push that idea. So the presuppositions, life is before art or is greater than art. Art exists only to offer therapeutic channels through which culture spreads among the masses. This is the Arnoldian idea. And of course, the mimetic view, we have Aristotle in the background. So here are some names, but we'll have to rush through. So literature is of timeless significance. The literary text is self-sufficient and carries its own meaning within itself. So it is self-referential instead of being related to the context. It should be studied in isolation, in an apolitical manner. Human nature is essentially unchanging, and we have a unique essence. So it is this idea of unique essence which hints at a kind of transcendence, uh, going beyond the constraints of time and space. And the ultimate purpose is to spread human life, propagation of humane values. So I've given you certain examples here. So think of the conventional readings of a text like Dr. Faustus. Faustus's character is an example of a genius gone wrong, someone who is too self-willed and wantingly ambitious to even contemplate that one individual's power gathered from his own idea of what is to be known is this error of thinking that that could surpass the communal and kindred spirit of Christian salvation, which Faustus rejects when he signs up this pact with the devil. So we have a character analysis. So hubris, we don't need to refer it. It's from Poetics. So we all know that. Satanic has a little occult connotation, but this was enough in liberal humanist criticism to sort of sketch out Faustus's character. It's ambitious, conflicted, greedy. So moral lines would see the so when you go to a cross-examination of the character, you can see it's being done in terms that are more fitting to the morality play, which has a Christian context, to it. The morality play ultimately grew out of a biblical past where there would be repeated cyclic performances of episodes from the Bible. So that framework is coming in, but instead you are saying that this framework is for all time. Lectures on Shakespearean tragedy, A.C. Bradley, one of the greatest examples of liberal humanist scholarship, and it reads very good, and I still read it, but these analytical frameworks used are a little rusty right now. Then we have, say, Eliot's reading of Hamlet. All of these are formative for the sort of solidification of the project, which began with I.A. Richards' practical criticism in 1929. So Hamlet and his problems, once again, Eliot is pushing for something called the objective correlative. We all know this, rendering emotions through activities on the stage or interrelationships among the characters. So his chief problem, Eliot's chief problem with Hamlet, was the fact that there was no objective correlative to Hamlet's conflict. And to do that, he went back to the source materials of Hamlet, the Ur-Hamlet, for example, or the older play, which was supposedly known in German, and Shakespeare had even supposedly encountered this German text. So Eliot argues that since there is no objective correlative to why Hamlet feigns madness, why he does not kill Claudius immediately after he is convinced that the ghost is not telling a lie. So in doing that, Eliot says the chief problem is the character does not have an objective correlative of his own emotions. But this objectivization of this correlative has more to do with modernist angst rather than having a perennially unchanging quality of literary text across all eras. This is the cardinal error. Literature can never be entirely objective because the tools used to study literature are always qualitative rather than quantitative, and therefore there will never be a perfect agreement or objectivity. So this is something which the early forefathers of liberal humanist criticism attempted in literary studies and failed at. So the first movement I'm going to go through is new criticism. So I hope I'm audible and you can all listen to me clearly. There can be a third example. We'll come back to it if we have the time, but we must rush through. So, new criticism. It's an American movement which was largely inspired by Richards, I.A. Richards, who started in Cambridge the practical criticism movement, and gradually this sort of centered reading on the text. This came into academia, in the American academia, which would study literature in terms of themes, forms, motifs, symbols. These are the usual techniques we use to read any literary text. A formalist movement, it dominated American academia from the 1940s to about the 1970s. And this name is derived from John Crow Ransom, his uh, book, The New Criticism, published in 1946. Eliot's essays, these two essays are very famous, and these essays are the background to such kind of textual reading. Then it's text-centric, which sort of separates out into thematic and formal. Structure and meaning of a text are not separate. We all know these things, but I'm just going through them to better understand. So, what should we not study in this kind of reading? The author's intent adduced from the biography, historical or sociological or sociocultural context, moralistic bias, which uses the canon of Christian scholarship to buttress its own claims. And the new critics didn't have any clearly defined manifesto, but their ideas were put forth by the essay, the critic Cleant Brooks, who authored the essay, The New Criticism, and two figures, Wimsatt and Beardsley, they came up with two concepts. First one is the intentional fallacy, 1946. So I have tried to sum up what the broad tendencies were: divest or strip literature of the context, so words on the page approach, do not go outside structures of connotation embedded in language, do not read the context, assume language of relative objectivity, objectivity but relative objectivity, because as I said, literature can never be entirely objective. There's a formal disjunct between literature and objectivity. So on the left, you can see the well-wrought urn, uh, studies in the structure of poetry. This is by Clint Brooks, a very foundational book of new criticism. But I'm just going through these things because uh, they were important in a kind of textual competency. If you think about it at the UG level, when you're looking at getting into any college, and if it has an admission test, what are you given to write? You are basically first tested, the proficiency in English language is tested through certain grammatical exercises, and then you are asked to write as much as you can on certain issues, uh, essays, and you're also asked to read a poem or say a prose piece. So what we do in comprehension exercises like this, you write the critical appreciation or say even the summary, is what we have been taught by the liberal humanist school, which is very close textual reading, attention to the words on the page, and context comes in, of course, details of the biography comes in, but we should not be fooled by uh, contextual information. So it's like a raised pivot. So one part is already raised on a pulpit. The text is the Bible. It is on, you are on the pulpit. You are the priest, the high priest of interpretation. And therefore, I'll just show you this one thing. This, just a minute. So this, for example, Levy's. I'm giving you an example of Lewisite reading. Lewis talks of energy as a defining trait of great novelists, varying it in broad strokes. So, from Conrad to Charles Dickens, everyone is someone who writes with vivacious energy. They're all distinguished by a vital capacity for experience. Now, this is something which we call a certain kind of floweriness in language. The problem with this floweriness is you're not defining anything in terms of even broadly agreed upon standards. What is, by God's sake, a vital capacity for experience? Who doesn't have it is something any listener would want to ask. A common energy of vision characterizes novelists from Dickens to Conrad. So this is a broad sweep, a swashbuckling sweep. It says that the canon is everything. The canon, which has been established by partly a historical accident, because the establishment of the canon depends on a lot of other things. These are socio-political factors. Why, for example, where people never taught, say, Letitia Lendl Smith or Patricia Hemans, who are women poets of the Romantic era. Even the term women poets, some tokenism is involved, where you are immediately uh, grouping all individual poets under one broad header, the Romantic women poets. So this is basically the tale of English departments in the American academia also from 1940s to 70s. This contending spirit of some tokenism preserved and some love lost in sort of advocating what should be the canon. So I think it's time for me to sort of wrap up the first part of part one. You can consider completed, and I am getting into theory proper, uh, which is, of course, structuralism. Uh,
Sir, would you like to take a break of 5 minutes or so? Hello? So, are you there? Hello? So, are you here? Professor Ghosh? Sir, are you here? Yes, I think so too. I think there's some technical error. Let's wait for him to join. Okay, we'll take a 5 minute break. I'm sure he has some technical issues. And anyway, after part one, each part we were supposed to take a break. So we'll come back after that. Thank you so much. Sir, are you here?
Yes, I think I've been able to join the meeting.
Yes, we kind of guessed that there was some technical error. So
Yes,
do you
yes.
want a 5 minute break after
Uh,
each part?
Yes, I can take a 5 minute. I could really use a 5 minute break, but
Sure.
just a little scared as to how long we can stretch our complete 3 sessions. So, because the next session is going to take a little bit more than 40 minutes, I think. So,
No problem,
if
sir.
it's okay.
Whatever you're
Okay.
comfortable with. Absolutely all right.
Okay, so I think it's okay if we can take a break of 5 minutes.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.